Hi there. In this topic video, we're going to focus on the growth of businesses and ask the question, how do firms grow? Let's make a start by distinguishing between organic business growth and external growth of a business. And by the way, there's going to be loads of good examples in this next 10 minutes. So, organic growth, also known as internal growth, and it happens when a business simply increases its own output, expands its own operations, rather than relying on the external growth associated with takeovers and mergers. Lots of ways that firms can grow organically. They can increase their own production capacity by adding to the capital stock of machinery and factories and other types of equipment. They can develop and test and then launch new products, perhaps by researching, by ploughing back the profits into the business, or from borrowing by banks. They can find new markets, head into emerging countries where per capita incomes are rising quite quickly, such as India or Latin America, South Africa. And crucially, organic growth comes about by building an installed base of customers, people who've already bought from you, perhaps buying one product who could be persuaded to buy more through effective, successful marketing. So having a wider range, for example, of retail outlets or channels could be a significant way to grow organically. There's particular interest in the moment in what's called omni-channel marketing. Omni-channel, having many different platforms from which sales can happen. Here are a couple of examples of businesses that have grown quite quickly organically. The sportswear company Under Armour, just a few years ago in the UK for sure, was a fairly niche product. And judging by looking at people on the high street, it's now become pretty mainstream. They spend heavily, by the way, on marketing and selling their products in the UK stores, and by sponsoring, for example, the Welsh Rugby Union team. And Tottenham Hotspur. Under Armour generates turnover around £2 billion per year. That's growing very quickly by over 20%. Expanding the product range, moving into new markets. A big success story in the UK is a business known as Whitbread. And one of their most successful products and brands is the Costa coffee chain. They also own Premier Inn, the budget hotel chain, and a restaurant chain called TGI Fridays. While Whitbread has done tremendously well in recent times, it's one of the fastest growing businesses in the UK, largely done through organic growth. And Lego is an absolutely fascinating business. The legend has it that Lego has never made an acquisition. It's grown completely organically, focusing heavily on developing new products, innovation as a driver of revenue. It's got a claim to being the world's biggest construction company, and that's certainly something to build on. Here's a good example of how a business can grow organically and quickly at the same time. Oftentimes, students think that organic growth is slow growth. It doesn't have to be that way. So Costa has more than doubled the number of Costa coffee stores, including their mobile outlets, since 2008. It's been a big success story. Adidas likewise has achieved fairly rapid growth in recent times, again focusing on the expansion of their retail platform. They've increased the number of concept stores, for example, from just over 1,000 in 2008 to over 1,700 in 2014. That figure, of course, will now be much higher. Here's another example of a business that's grown organically and perhaps achieved some network effects, some network economies of scale. So Spotify, you can see here the number of paying subscribers went up from less than 500,000 in 2010, broke through the million mark in 2011, the 6 million mark in 2013, and that's increased fivefold to 30 million paying subscribers in March of 2016. Quite staggering increase in growth. Again, organic growth. Twitter also likewise, the micro blogging site. The number of active users is now over 300 million, although the concern is that growth rate is slowing down. The big challenge for businesses such as Twitter that have grown is to turn monthly active users into a sufficient revenue generating channel, in other words, monetize the business. Well, they've made some progress, their revenues have increased, but perhaps not quite as fast as stock market investors wanted to see. So organic growth is growth by the internal expansion of a business. Of course, the other option is to grow externally, to grow through the process of merger and or takeover. Let's quickly work through some examples of external growth. So backward vertical integration is when a firm buys another firm in the same industry but further back in the supply chain. That gives the firm a greater control over the supply source. So for example, a food retailer might buy a food producer, or we take industries such as oil and gas. They're deeply vertically integrated from extraction to refining to the final retail stage. Forward vertical is when the buyer buys another firm in the same industry but forward in the supply chain, in other words closer to the final consumer. And to do that, firms need to have more control over their main sales outlets. Brewing's a really good example. Lots of brewing companies own their own pubs and wine bars. Horizontal integration, of course, is a simple type of merger or takeover. It's where two firms come together at the same stage in the same industry. For example, two airlines might merge. Lateral integration is similar to horizontal but slightly different. It's when a firm buys another business in a related field. So a confectionery firm might buy a chain of chewing gum makers. For example, Mars bought Wrigley in 2008. Software companies might buy games developers. Conglomerates, we have a separate note on conglomerates. Conglomerate is a merger or takeover where two firms join in basically unrelated fields. The main aim is to drive business diversification. Take a look at our study note on conglomerates for some really good examples. So these are 5 types of business integration: vertical, forward and backward, horizontal, lateral, and conglomerate. Here's a few examples of recent acquisitions made by the Google giant, the behemoth of web search, our good friends at Google. And you can see there's some significant acquisitions. For example, they bought YouTube in 2006 for just $1.6 billion, which in today's money feels like a bit of a snip. They bought the firm Waze in 2013 for just over $1 billion. And they bought DeepMind, a British artificial intelligence company, in January 2014 for just $500 million. Here are some acquisitions: external growth made by the online retail giant Amazon, including purchasing the British firm Love Film in 2011 for $300 million. So Amazon and Google have fast-forwarded their growth with a selection of important acquisitions. And here's another business that's on the rise. You'll be hearing a lot more about Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, a man who's been rejected by Harvard, allegedly 10 times. Alibaba, one of the world's biggest internet retailers, perhaps the biggest web retailer on the planet. You are going to hear a lot more about Alibaba, believe me. So in this short video, we have focused on how firms grow, and in particular, we've made a distinction between organic, internal growth of a business and external growth of a business through merger and acquisition. Hope you found it useful. Join in again sometime soon.